Alright, that should be good. Now I just need to search here and... oh no. Alright, better make this quick before YouTube snaps me out of existence. Fun fact, I love me some rhythm games, and among them, the Project Diva games have always been some of my favorites. What can I say? Turns out combining the Vocaloid music that I loved growing up with some really tight rhythm gameplay is a recipe for some of my favorite games, well, ever. And hey, we have a new one on the Nintendo Switch, so of course I'm going to talk about it. Now, I don't want to be the guy who talks about Sega too many times in a row and then animorphs into a Dreamcast, but I gotta talk about this one because I've got some takes. This is normally the part where I'd go into the history of the series and talk about the older entries, but I actually have plans for those once I learn how to bypass the HDCP of my PlayStation TV, and that's all going to be better spent on a video that isn't fast-tracked to hell, so that's all going to be for another time. There is one entry that I have to talk about, but we'll get there when we get there. So if you're unfamiliar with how Project Diva games work, here's the rundown. It's a rhythm game where buttons fly in from all over the screen, and you have to push them in time with the music in order to build up a combo, with the end goal of getting a full combo, which you'll inevitably miss by one note because life is suffering. MegaMix is based on the arcade Future Tone gameplay, meaning that there are directional swipe notes, multi-taps that require hitting multiple buttons at the same time, and optional hold notes that increase your score. Though not my favorite gameplay of the franchise, it's still solid, though of course I was going to say that. Evidently, there isn't really much you can talk about with this game in regards to its mechanics, so this video is less about the gameplay and more about the package itself, and addressing some of the concerns, which is important since there's a big elephant in the room that I'll get into in a bit. So starting with the presentation, the game does look really good, though it isn't without an asterisk next to that. The game uses the Toon Shader engine for the modules, which I know some people have a problem with. I personally quite like the cel-shaded look, but whether you love or hate it, it does help give MegaMix a visual identity at least, and God knows it needs as much as that as it can get. We're getting there! Another concern people have is about the performance. Luckily, MegaMix manages to hit a consistent 60 frames per second while it's docked. Okay, this part's gonna be weird because I can't really record from handheld mode well, so you gotta bear with me here. The PVs in handheld are for the most part locked at 30 frames per second, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but that's only for the most part. Some PVs actually run at a full 60 frames a second, and it's pretty jarring when that happens. It's also really inconsistent about what songs run at what frame rate. You'd think all the new PVs would run at 30, but no, some of them run at 60, but the animated ones don't, and it's all just really confusing. Just play the PV for Hibana, and then go play the PV for Roki, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Luckily, the gameplay itself still runs at a consistent 60 frames per second regardless of the song, so it won't actually impact your performance. It's just a weird oddity that I needed to mention. As for the things MegaMix has that's new, the game includes 10 new songs not yet seen in the franchise, and I really like the list. I'm always a big fan of Alien Alien. The inclusion of Hibana and Ohedo Julia Knight made me a fan of those songs, and the madmen at Sega decided to let Makito P have not one, but 2 songs in the form of 39 Music and Roki, and those songs slap as well. Pretty disappointed in the lack of song-specific modules though. A lot of the new songs just straight up use their original PVs, and the rest, while having really good ones to be fair, use the default modules, which just comes off as a bit lazy. The big draw for this version is the titular mix mode, and it's a mode that uses motion controls. Look, if it ain't Beat Saber, motion controls just don't work for rhythm games, and sadly this one doesn't fare much better. You hold the Joy-Cons in a thumbs-up grip, and you tilt them from side to side to move their respective reticles, and you push any of the shoulder buttons to hit the notes. Two problems here. The first being that it just doesn't feel that smooth to move. I will fully admit that I might not be doing it right, but no matter how I position my hands at the beginning of the song, things become a struggle really fast. The second thing, the shoulder buttons on the Joy-Con suck when it comes to pushing them fast, and guess what the charts have you do? It's not impossible, but mix mode is just a fun party trick at best, and actively painful at worst, and that's just on the normal difficulty. Playing on hard mode? Good luck. There's also a touch mode that you can play in handheld mode, but there's not really much to say here. You touch the on-screen buttons to hit the regular notes, and you swipe the screen for the swipe notes. It is reminiscent of the arcade version in regards to its setup, but that's about all it has going for it. It was an extra thing that was added in as a patch, to be fair, so I can't really be too hard on it. In regards to the customization, in addition to a large variety of modules and accessories, the game also now allows you to select the hairstyles independently from their modules, giving you just a bit more freedom in how you want the game to look. There's also t-shirts. There's a whole bunch built into the game that were created by fans, which is super neat, but the game also gives you 5 blank shirts that you can customize yourself. Using the tool for it is a little bit stiff, and I'm obviously no artist, but it is a fun little extra thing that you can mess around with if you feel like it. Okay, it's time we talk about that elephant in the room, and that's Future Tone. I mentioned the arcade version before, and Future Tone on PS4 is pretty much just a port of that. Likewise, MegaMix is almost a carbon copy of Future Tone in regards to its setup and its gameplay. But there's one big difference, and that's the number of songs. MegaMix with its DLC, which is a whole other can of worms, costs $60 and comes up to 141 songs, which is a respectable number, to be fair, but Future Tone on the PS4 costs the same with its DLC and has a total of 238 songs. And yeah, that means there's a lot of songs unaccounted for. I want to stress that I myself am still personally satisfied with the song list, as a lot of my favorites like Envy Catwalk, Cat Food, Remote Controller, and Nice to Meet You Mr. Earthling, among others, managed to make the cut. But one of the best parts about these games was discovering new favorites via playing, and in that regard MegaMix is a lot more limiting, especially if you're a longtime fan of this franchise. Without the sheer number of songs like what Future Tone has, MegaMix needs to start giving reasons as to why you should drop $60 for it instead of its beefier alternative. And if you're saying the 10 new songs that I mentioned earlier are that reason, well, no, they're not, because apparently those songs are going to become DLC in Future Tone too. Thus it falls to mix mode and the t-shirts to sell this game, and given what I've already said, it's not a terribly good look. The game is still good on its own merits, make no mistake about that, but it just has the unfortunate burden of having to be compared to Future Tone, and that makes it really hard for me to recommend MegaMix wholeheartedly. If you don't have a PS4, or if you're just dying for some portable Project Diva, then sure, go for it. Just make sure you have enough storage space for it, because oh my god, this game is big. But if you do have a PS4, I'd honestly tell you to just get Future Tone instead. It'll probably cost like $10 more once the DLC comes out, but that's a very small price to pay for how many more songs you're going to end up with. This is the part where I talk about the future, and honestly, I don't know. Hopefully we can move past just adapting the arcade game and we start getting more original games. I'd love to see another crack at what Project Diva X was going for, or heck, maybe we can get the elusive Project Diva RPG? I'd play it. But that's really all I gotta say, so see ya!